You know what's wild? Most people are still overpaying for car insurance just because it's a pain to switch. That's why there's Jerry. Jerry's the only app that compares rates from over 50 insurers in minutes and helps you switch fast with no spam calls or hidden fees. Drivers who save with Jerry could save over $1,300 a year. Before you renew your car insurance policy, do yourself a favor. Download the Jerry app or head to jerry.ai/ACAST.
Did you know you can save up to 70% on your favorite brands every single day? FromRebel.com sells strollers, car seats, espresso machines, skincare, cookware, everything you need for your home, your family, and your life, all for way less. Here's how it works. Every day, Rebel drops thousands of new products for up to 70% off. It's a non-stop feed of deals from brands like UPPAbaby, Nuna, Baby Bjorn, Nespresso, Breville, Wilson, Dyson, Caraway, and more. But every listing is one of a kind. So if you see something you love, you have to move fast. Why pay full price when you don't have to? From baby gear to tech to self-care staples, Rebel helps you save big on brands you know and love. Shop now at FromRebel.com.
May 1st, 1976. A man named Anton Lagrange had just left the small Karoo town of Uniondale and was driving towards Utsworn, located in the Western Cape province of South Africa. Night had already settled across the landscape. Once the last lights of the town disappeared behind him, the road became very dark. Uniondale sits in a rural farming region. In the 1970s, the roads between towns were quiet at night. A driver could travel for long stretches without seeing another vehicle, and on this particular night, the weather had turned bad. Rain was falling steadily, and the wind moved across the open farmland beside the road. Anton drove slowly, watching the narrow beam of his headlights on the wet tar ahead. The windshield wipers moved back and forth. Beyond the headlights, everything was black. After a few minutes of driving, Anton noticed something standing beside the road. At first, it looked like a shape in the rain, and as he got closer, he realised it was a person. A young woman was standing alone on the gravel shoulder. She looked to be in her early 20s. She had dark hair and pale skin. She was wearing slacks and a duffel coat, clothing that suggested she had been outside for some time in the cold wind and rain. Anton slowed the car and pulled over. On rural roads like this, stopping for someone stranded at night was not unusual. There were long distances between towns, and anyone left walking in bad weather could face a difficult journey. The young woman walked toward the car. Instead of opening the front passenger door, she walked around the back and opened the rear door of his Mercedes. She got into the back seat and closed the door behind her. Anton glanced at her in the rear view mirror. She sat quietly behind him. Her coat was wet from the rain. And later he would remember a small detail that crossed his mind in that moment. The car had had new leather seats, and he briefly wondered if the rainwater from her clothes might leave marks on them. But he decided not to say anything, and simply asked where she wanted to go. And from the back of the car, a clear and calm voice said, "DeLang, 2 Porter Street." Anton nodded and pulled back onto the road. The rain continued falling. For a while, the journey felt normal. Anton drove carefully, keeping his speed low because of the weather. The young woman remained silent in the back seat. He occasionally glanced into the rearview mirror, but she did not speak again. He began thinking about the address she had given him. The name Porter Street did not sound familiar to him, and he wondered if it might be somewhere he had simply forgotten. After a few minutes, he decided he would ask her again. Anton turned his head slightly and looked into the rear-view mirror, and the back seat was empty. For a moment he thought he was mistaken. He slowed the car and looked again. The seat behind him was completely empty. Anton immediately pulled the Mercedes over to the side of the road. The rain continued falling as he stepped outside of the car and walked around the back. Both rear doors were closed. The seat was dry except for faint marks left by the rain on the leather. Anton walked a short distance along the road, shining his headlight across the gravel shoulder and the dark fields beyond. There was no sign of a young woman, nothing but the sound of rain falling on the road. And after several minutes, he returned to the car. He sat there for a moment trying to understand what had happened, and then started the engine and turned his car around, heading back toward Uniondale. He wanted to speak to the police. The town was only a few minutes away, and when the first street lights appeared ahead of him, the road finally felt familiar again. He drove straight to the Uniondale police station and parked outside. Inside, he told the officer on duty what had happened. He explained that he had picked up a young woman on the road near the Barandas turnoff just outside of town. She had climbed into the back seat of his Mercedes and was asked to be taken to an address, the Lang 2 Porter Street. And then, while he was driving, she had disappeared from the car. The officer on duty was Sergeant Cornelius Snowy Pagirier. Pagirier listened to Anton's story carefully, but did not seem convinced. Uniondale was a quiet farming town, and it was rare for strange reports to occasionally reach the station late at night. He suggested that perhaps the girl had slipped out of the car without Anton noticing. Anton insisted that was impossible. He had stopped the car and searched the road. There had been no one there. After a short conversation, Anton left the station and returned to his Mercedes. Outside, the rain was still falling across the quiet streets of Uniondale, and Anton resumed his journey and drove out of town again along the same road toward the Barandas turnoff. Within a few minutes, the streetlights disappeared behind him. The road narrowed again into darkness as he passed through the open farmland just outside the town. He drove slowly through the rain, and then something happened. He reported that a sound came from inside the car. It was sudden and loud. A cry. Anton would describe it in very specific terms. He said it was the most chilling sound he had ever heard in his life, and even years later, he could not say exactly what it had been. He told investigators, "I cannot tell you to this day if it was a laugh or a scream. It came from inside the car. It was very loud, even though I was completely alone." Anton reacted immediately. He turned his car around and drove straight back to Uniondale. When he reached the police station again, he went inside and asked the sergeant to come with him. This time the officer agreed. He climbed into the police vehicle and followed Anton as they drove back out of Uniondale together. Anton's Mercedes travelled ahead. Pottier followed behind at a short distance. They were travelling at a steady speed of about 70 kilometers per hour when something unusual happened. From the police vehicle behind, the sergeant suddenly saw the rear door of the Mercedes slowly swing open while the car was still moving. The door remained open for a moment, then it gently closed again. Later, Anton described what it looked like from inside the car. It opened slowly and closed again, exactly as if someone had stepped out of the car and then shut the door behind them. Both slowed and stopped their cars. The sergeant decided to search the roadside, but they found no trace of a young woman, and eventually the strange night came to an end. The sergeant returned to Uniondale, locked up the police station for the night and went home. But the events of that evening stayed with him. About 2 years after Anton's encounter, another man reported something unusual on the same road outside Uniondale. His name was Douwe van Jaarsveld. On the evening of the 31st of March 1978, at about 9:35 p.m, Douwe was riding his motorcycle along the road between Uniondale and Willowmore. As he reached the stretch near Baranda's turn-off, he saw someone standing beside the road. It was a young woman. She stood near the gravel shoulder facing the road. Douwe slowed and brought the motorcycle to a stop. When the engine settled into a quieter idle, the woman stepped closer. He later described her as pale with dark hair, wearing dark clothing. She looked young, perhaps in her early 20s. She spoke very quietly. Douwe could not hear her clearly over the sound of the engine, though he believed she mentioned a street. He asked if she needed a lift. The woman nodded. Luckily, he was carrying a spare crash helmet attached to the back of the motorcycle. He unclipped it and handed it to her. He said she put the helmet on and climbed onto the back seat behind him. He started the motorcycle and pulled away from the roadside. For a short distance, everything seemed normal. Then he noticed something strange. The air around him suddenly felt cold. At the same time, the motorcycle shifted slightly beneath him, as though the weight behind him had changed. He slowed and brought the motorcycle to a stop and turned around. The seat behind him was empty. The young woman was gone. Douwe switched off the engine and walked back along the road, looking towards the gravel shoulder and the dark fields beside it. There was no one there. After searching the area briefly, he returned to the motorcycle. That was when he noticed something else. The spare crash helmet he had given the woman was clipped back onto the rear rack of the motorcycle, exactly where it had been before he removed it. Douwe rode back to Uniondale. Later that night, he stopped at a cafe in town where people noticed that something had clearly shaken him. By now, Anton's story had already been circulating in the town, and now there was another account of a young woman standing beside the road outside Uniondale. But the road outside Uniondale had a history. Long before Anton stopped his car in the rain, and Douwe giving a lift to a stranger on the road, something had happened there. And to find out what, we need to go back to April 12th, 1968. A young woman named Maria Charlotte Roux was travelling through the Western Cape with her fiancé, an army corporal named Giel Oberholster. They were travelling from Pretoria towards the coastal town of Riversdale, where Maria's parents lived. Maria was 22 years old. Friends and family later described her as lively and warm. She loved music, enjoyed being around animals, and had a quick sense of humour that people loved. She had recently become engaged to Giel, and the journey was meant to be a happy one. She wanted to show her parents the ring. The couple were travelling in a Volkswagen Beetle, heading south through the small towns of the Landclub. That evening at approximately 8 p.m, they reached the stretch of road just outside Uniondale, near the Baranda's turn-off. With the road running through open farmland, on windy nights the gusts can sweep across the valley without warning, and somewhere along this section of the road, the Beetle suddenly left the tar. The car overturned. Maria Roux was thrown from the vehicle. She landed in a ditch beside the road. Giel survived the crash but was injured and disorientated. In the darkness, he struggled to understand what had happened and could not immediately find Maria. Sometime later, another motorist travelling along the road noticed the wrecked car and stopped. Maria was discovered by the road. She had died there. And then years later, drivers began reporting encounters with a young woman standing beside the road. And the place where they saw her was very close to where Maria Roux had died. Sergeant Pat MacDonald knew all about this tragedy. He was the first officer to the scene of the accident that day. I found a Volkswagen Beetle off the road, and a girl was lying on her back with her head against the embankment. She had died of head injuries. I later ascertained that her name was Maria Roux. The driver survived. 3 years before Anton LaGrange stopped his Mercedes in the rain, another couple had encountered something strange on the road. The year was 1973. A man named Leonard Fraser and his wife Catherine were driving through the valley late at night. They were travelling along the road between Willowmore and Uniondale. It was close to midnight. At one point, Leonard pulled the car over to the side of the road. He stepped out to stretch his legs. The engine remained running and the headlights continued shining down the road ahead. Catherine remained in the passenger seat watching through the windshield. Leonard stood beside the car for a moment looking across the dark fields. Then he noticed something that had not been there when they stopped. A young woman was standing nearby. She was not far from the car. Leonard later described her as wearing a long white gown that stood clearly out against the darkness surrounding her. The sight shocked him. The road had been empty when he stepped out of the car. There had been no sound of footsteps and no other vehicle had passed. Yet now a woman was standing beside the road only a short distance away. He quickly got back into the car and drove off immediately. As they pulled away, the couple looked back through the rear window. The woman was still there. She had not moved. She remained standing beside the road, her figure visible in the fading light of the headlights as the car moved further away. Within seconds, the darkness swallowed the road behind them. At the time, they treated it as a strange and unsettling moment. Only later, when other drivers began reporting encounters with a young woman beside the same road outside Uniondale, the Frasers' sighting became part of a larger story. Others had now come forward. On Good Friday 1980, motorcyclist Andrei Kutzi, 20, had a terrifying experience. He told a reporter, "All of a sudden, I felt hands around my waist. I could actually feel the pressure, and as I looked down, I saw the hands. I was very, very scared, and I felt like I must get away from that place. That is when I accelerated, and at about 150 kilometers an hour, she gave me 3 whacks against my head, and then she disappeared. I never saw nobody standing near the road or nothing." Andre drove to a local cafe in Uniondale for help. He could barely speak when we asked him what had happened, said Janetta Mayer, the cafe owner. In 1983, Danny Denock and his wife also had an encounter. "My wife and I had stopped next to the road to take a rest. My wife was asleep in the passenger seat. It was late at night, and there wasn't a slightest wind. I got out and walked around the car, a Volkswagen Beetle. I went to the toilet, and that's when I heard a terrible sound like a rushing wind come rolling down the road. And then it went dead quiet as it reached the car. I got the fright of my life and ran back to the driver's side to be met by someone sitting in my seat. I ran back to the other side again to pull my wife out of the car, as I thought we were being hijacked. But upon wakening my wife, I discovered the other person was gone. We left the spot in a hurry, and about 500 metres down the road, we saw this woman in what seemed to be dressed in a gown waving at us to slow down. I reduced my speed in case it was someone in need of help, but before we could reach her, she disappeared. I stopped at the garage in Uniondale and told a stranger about my experience, and that was the first time I learned about this ghost. You can imagine the chills that went down my spine. Years after the sightings on the road outside Uniondale, the story attracted the attention of a South African journalist named Cynthia Hind. Hind had spent many years documenting unusual cases and explained reports from across South Africa. When she came across the Uniondale story, one small detail stood out to her immediately: the address. During the encounter reported by Anton, the young woman had spoken only once. She had given a name and a location: the Lange, 2 Porter Street. Hind decided to try and trace it. She began by finding out where a Porter Street existed in the region, and records showed that one could be found in the town of Worcester, about 2 hours away from Uniondale. So she decided to write a letter addressed simply to Occupant, 2 Porter Street, Worcester. When the reply arrived, it did not solve the mystery. The address belonged to a boarding establishment connected to a school. Hind continued searching. While travelling through the coastal town of George, she discovered that there was another Porter Street there. She visited the address herself, but by the time she arrived, the original building at number 2 no longer existed. It had been demolished and replaced by small cottages. The residents living there knew nothing about the story and had never heard the name DeLonge connected to the property. Municipal records offered no further information. The address remained unconnected to anyone. Hind also tried to trace members of Maria Rue's family while researching the case. She confirmed that Maria had been buried in Riversdale Cemetery and contacted the police station there for information. She learned that Maria's mother had later moved to Somerset West but was unable to locate her. She also wrote letters to several people with the surname Rue, hoping to reach someone in the family. She attempted to trace Gail Obelholster, the fiancé who had survived in the crash in 1968. Gail had died in a road accident in 1984. And it is said that around this time, the sightings of a woman on a road outside Uniondale had apparently stopped appearing. According to some residents of Uniondale, her ghost has not been seen for a long time. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Don't forget, if you like what you hear, to hit that follow button so you don't miss any future episodes of Scary. If you have your own paranormal experience that you'd like me to narrate on the show, you can send it to scaryaparanormalpodcast@gmail.com and it just might get made into a future episode. If you would like more scary episodes, you can find the link to the show's Patreon in this episode's show notes, or simply go to patreon.com/scaryaparanormalpodcast, where you can get access to ad-free main episodes as well as exclusive scary episodes. Once again, thank you for listening, and join me next week for another episode of Scary.
Did you know you can save up to 70% on your favorite brands every single day? From Rebel.com sells strollers, car seats, espresso machines, skincare, cookware, everything you need for your home, your family, and your life, all for way less. Here's how it works. Every day, Rebel drops thousands of new products for up to 70% off. It's a non-stop feed of deals from brands like UPPAbaby, Nuna, Baby Bjorn, Nespresso, Breville, Wilson, Dyson, Caraway, and more. But every listing is one of a kind. So if you see something you love, you have to move fast. Why pay full price when you don't have to? From baby gear to tech to self-care staples, Rebel helps you save big on brands you know and love. Shop now at FromRebel.com.
Youth mental health is a complex challenge that requires comprehensive solutions. We must strengthen after-school programs. We must make digital literacy tools available in our schools. We must work with mental health professionals to support children. And we must empower mentors, educators, and parents to keep kids happy. Learn more about our commitment to finding lasting solutions at empowerourfuturecoalition.com/solutions. Paid for by the Coalition to Empower Our Future.
Hey, this is Adam Grant, host of TED's podcast, Rethinking with Adam Grant. Have you heard of Bill? It's the intelligent finance platform that uses AI to help you avoid costly errors and optimize cash flow. In fact, Bill reports that over 90 of the top 100 U.S. accounting firms trust them to manage, move, and maximize money, proven by over $1 trillion in secure transactions. Eliminate the friction and start scaling with the proven choice. Visit Bill.com/proven to talk with an expert about automating your business finances and get a $250 gift card as a thank you. That's Bill.com/proven. Terms and conditions apply. See offer page for details.
To tip off this NBA season on FanDuel, you can choose your own rewards, which means you can play your game any way you want.
I get to choose my rewards?
Yep.
Great! Now, excuse me while I lock in.
All customers choose your own reward right now in the FanDuel app. 21 plus and present in select states. 18 plus in Kentucky. Opt-in required. Rewards are non-withdrawable. Restrictions apply, including bonus and token expiration, leg requirement, and max wager amount. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Youth mental health is a complex challenge that requires comprehensive solutions. We must strengthen after-school programs. We must make digital literacy tools available in our schools. We must work with mental health professionals to support children. And we must empower mentors, educators, and parents to keep kids happy. Learn more about our commitment to finding lasting solutions at empowerourfuturecoalition.com/solutions. Paid for by the Coalition to Empower Our Future.
Hey, this is Adam Grant, host of TED's podcast, Rethinking with Adam Grant. Let me share with you why smart finance leaders turn to Bill. They know that clarity isn't just helpful, it's strategic. As the intelligent finance platform, Bill uses AI to automate the busy work for nearly 500,000 businesses so they can focus on intentional growth. Eliminate the friction and start scaling with the proven choice. Visit Bill.com/proven to talk with an expert about automating your business finances and get a $250 gift card as a thank you. That's Bill.com/proven. Terms and conditions apply. See offer page for details.
Did you know you can save up to 70% on your favorite brands every single day? From Rebel.com sells strollers, car seats, espresso machines, skincare, cookware, everything you need for your home, your family, and your life, all for way less. Here's how it works. Every day, Rebel drops thousands of new products for up to 70% off. It's a nonstop feed of deals from brands like UPPAbaby, Nuna, Baby Bjorn, Nespresso, Breville, Wilson, Dyson, Caraway, and more. But every listing is one of a kind. So if you see something you love, you have to move fast. Why pay full price when you don't have to? From baby gear to tech to self-care staples, Rebel helps you save big on brands you know and love. Shop now at FromRebel.com.